Good afternoon, Commissioner Graves.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Sims.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you again. Thanks for all your time today, both of you. We so appreciate it.
Yours especially too.
It's a balmy 79 degrees here in my community. How about you?
Oh, it's just a lovely, perfect day over here. 85, no clouds in the sky.
All right. Terrific. Well, with that, why don't we get started? Good afternoon. I'm Sarah Augustine. I'm the chair of the Washington State Redistricting Commission. I'd like to welcome everyone to this public outreach meeting, the 12th one of this 2021 redistricting cycle. The topic of discussion today is Congressional Districts 4 and 5, and all of the legislative districts included within the 4th and the 5th Congressional districts. I'll have more to say about that later, but first, let's kick things off with a video message from the commissioners. Maria?
Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Augustine. I'm the chair of the Washington State Redistricting Commission, recently chosen by the 4 voting members of the commission to facilitate and to lead this effort.
Hello, everyone. I'm Commissioner April Sims.
I'm Commissioner Joe Fain.
I'm Commissioner Brady Pinheiro-Walkinshaw.
I'm Commissioner Paul Graves. I'm one of 4 voting members recently appointed by the state legislative leadership of the Washington State Redistricting Commission.
Once a decade, we redraw our congressional and state legislative district boundaries using data the Census Bureau collected last year, reflecting changes made to the population in the last 10 years.
States across the nation handle redistricting in different ways.
In Washington, the state constitution and law establish an independent redistricting commission.
As commission members, we've committed ourselves to a process that is open,
transparent,
and credible.
These maps will belong to all the people of Washington.
With that in mind, we encourage you to help us draw your WA.
The commission will hold virtual public outreach meetings focused on populations residing in each of Washington's 10 congressional districts,
as well as additional outreach meetings to be scheduled soon.
Live Spanish and American Sign Language interpretations will be available for each of these meetings.
With your unique insights about the community, we will work to ensure a credible redistricting process, resulting in maps reflecting fair representation for all Washingtonians.
Please take part. After all, it's really your map.
So come help us draw your WA.
Help us draw our WA.
Come help us draw your WA.
So please help us draw your WA.
Thank you, Maria. To maximize the number of opportunities for public input, this second round of public comment will be hosted by a bipartisan dyad, or one commissioner from each party. We did this to ensure that residents of each congressional district would have at least 2 opportunities for public comment. All comments heard this afternoon will be recorded into the official record and will be reviewed by all 4 voting commissioners. This afternoon, we are joined by Commissioner Graves and Commissioner Sims. To those of you from the public joining us today, welcome again. It is my goal as chair to facilitate a process that is as participatory, fair, and equitable as is possible. I will endeavor to engage communities across Washington as fully as I can and to hear and address your concerns and requests. Throughout our tenure as commissioners, we will hear public comments that are important. We will listen to you. I will do my best to synthesize the comments, and we will endeavor to respond as we are able. Still, it is possible that you will bring forward in your public comments ideas, requests, and injustices that we may not be able to address. We will certainly deliberate on the issues where we do have jurisdiction. Where we don't, I will do my best to refer you to those who may be able to respond more effectively. I would now like to review the purpose and values of the commission. Together as a commission, we have agreed to provide an open, transparent, and credible process that is grounded in statute and where all voices are welcome and there's access for everyone. To conduct ourselves with transparency, respect, and civility, where commissioners will participate and negotiate in good faith, and to meet the deadline outlined by law and produce the best possible maps. You may be aware that because of the pandemic, this redistricting cycle promises to be a challenging one. Excuse me. While we should have received the data from the Census Bureau that we need to begin to redistrict by April 1st of this year, we don't expect to have that data until late August. Nonetheless, in April, the Census Bureau did deliver to the President and the nation the apportionment data, which told us which states would gain seats in the US Congress and Electoral College and which would not. Based on that data, we know that in the last decade, the population of our state grew by 14.6% and added approximately 1 million residents. Despite that population growth, it did not change the number of congressional seats we're entitled to. Washington will continue to have 10 representatives in the US House of Representatives. Based on the population growth in the state, our job as the Redistricting Commission is to distribute as equally as is practical the population among 10 congressional districts and 49 legislative districts. Based on the census data from April, Washington had a population of 7,705,281 residents as of April 1st, 2020. Therefore, we need to draw 10 new congressional districts that are compact, contiguous, and convenient, and made up of approximately 770,528 residents, and 49 new legislative districts that are also compact, contiguous, and convenient, and made up of approximately 157,251 residents. Statute also instructs us, as much as is practical, to minimize drawing district lines that cut through counties, municipalities, or communities of interest. And the commission is committed to applying these principles while we try to create equally proportioned districts. So while we know the overall population of the state according to the census, we don't yet know the particulars of percentage growth across neighborhoods, towns, cities, and counties. Some population estimates of the last 10 years do give us a relatively good idea of where our 7.7 million residents live and which districts will need to get smaller in order to shed residents. And as we add or subtract neighborhoods from one district, it will cause the need to make corresponding adjustments to the neighboring districts. To show you broadly, Maria, can you put up the first map? This map shows Washington State and its 10 congressional districts. The darker the brown colors, the more the district needs to grow in size, and the darker the teal colors, the more the district needs to shrink in size. So regarding the topic of discussion today, the 4th and 5th congressional districts, the map indicates that the 4th and 5th congressional districts, according to state population estimates, currently have less than the needed 770,000 residents to make them proportional. They will both need to find additional residents. Now, next slide, please, Maria. The 4th congressional district includes all of legislative districts 8 and 15 and parts of legislative districts 7, 9, 12, 13, 14, and 16. The 5th congressional district includes all of legislative districts 3, 4, and 6, and parts of legislative districts 7, 9, 13, and 16. Based on state population estimates, we can see that the 8th and 9th legislative districts have more than the 157,000 residents in the districts. meaning they will have to lose some of their residents, while the 4th, 6th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th have less than the needed 157,000 residents and will need to find new residents to absorb. Thank you, Maria. So that's just a brief overview of the challenge that your redistricting commission faces this year. In essence, commissioners have to create a new puzzle out of the state, and the puzzle pieces have to contain nearly exactly the same population. As we make one puzzle piece smaller, its adjacent puzzle pieces will need to absorb those additional areas, meaning that every time a boundary is moved, it creates a cascade of changes in surrounding districts. The purpose of our meeting today is to listen to your input about your community and how to ensure that the districts are fairly balanced in terms of population, but also reflect shared community interests. The commission may not be able to meet every interest, but as commissioners try to weigh the trade-offs inherent in this process, your opinions are welcome and important. As of yesterday afternoon, we had nearly 100 individuals sign up to testify today. We are going to invite individuals in groups of 4 to testify. Each individual will have 2 minutes to offer comment. After 4 people have testified, we will see if the commissioners have any questions of the 4 testifiers, and then we will move to the next group of testifiers. With that summary, Sean, let's begin. Please call the first panel.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Our first panel will begin with John Calkins, Alexander Lomos, Blaine Tamaki, and Blanche Barajas. So we will begin with John, then Alexander. If you can begin your testimony. John, Alexander, I see you. If you can begin your testimony, please.
Yeah, I can. So as someone who's born and raised in the Tri-Cities, I believe that Legislative District 8 should include the Tri-Cities in its entirety. The Tri-Cities has had substantial population growth over this last decade, and I believe that Legislative District 8 would be better off including the entire Tri-Cities area. By not including the full Tri-Cities area, you're weakening the voice of those who live here and not accurately representing our point of view in the state Congress. The reality is that the Tri-Cities is a tight-knit community that is dependent on one another for our prosperity. And by not including the full Tri-Cities within Legislative District 8, you hurt our political representation. The Tri-Cities is the Tri-Cities for a reason, and I believe that our political boundaries should reflect that. That's pretty much all I have for that.
Thank you very much. I wonder if you could state your full name for the record, please.
Yeah, so my full name is Alexander David Lomas. David's my middle name.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And our next testifier, I see Blaine, you have your video on and you look like you're ready, so we can begin with you.
Thank you. My name is Blaine Tamaki. I'm a resident of the city of Yakima. I've lived here from age 8 and I'm 64 years old. I am testifying today to make sure that this commission gives due respect to the communities of color and the tribal reservations, and to keep them together as a voting block in the 4th Congressional District, and in dividing up the legislative districts to make sure that they're preserved as one tribal reservation and to preserve the Latino voting block as much as possible. Because in my experience as a voter in every election that I've been able to qualify to vote in from the age of majority, there's been a disproportionate impact on communities of color in the congressional district and legislative districts that I've resided in. As you all know, there needed to be federal intervention in the city of Yakima because of the disproportionate impact on communities of color with respect to the local elections. And that local election is just a microcosm of the bigger problem in the central Washington area in the 4th Congressional District. Finally, I'd like to say that the most important thing in setting the geographic lines that you're going to.
Mr. Tamaki, I'm so sorry, your time has elapsed, but at the end of this panel, we'll ask the commissioners if they have questions or comments for you. We would really like to see your full comment submitted by email if you're willing to submit them. And so, Sean, if you'd call the next testifier, please.
Of course, Chair. Our next testifier will be John Calkins. If you can begin your testimony, please.
Okay, I think, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, fine. I'm basically kind of trying to figure out what we're doing here. I understand that we're going to have to change the boundaries due to the population shifts. What I want to see done in the redistricting is to avoid shifting a whole bunch of people who do not represent the general area out of the general area. In other words, what happens is we need to maintain some degree of coherence with both the territory and the attitudes of the people who are in them. I could see the possibility of some political shenanigans, and I don't want to see any of that. Other than that, I don't really have much to add.
Thank you. We sure appreciate your comments. Sean, if you'd call the last testifier for this panel.
Of course, Chair. The last testifier for this panel will be Blanche Barajas. I see your video is on. If you can unmute and begin your testimony, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Perfect. Thank you, commissioners, for the opportunity. I am Blanche Barajas and serve as Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Pasco. I'm here on behalf of the Pasco City Council to provide you with input as you determine which state legislative districts will represent our community. As you likely know, the City of Pasco is currently split between 9th and 16th state legislative districts. Legislators from both districts live nearly an hour away from Pasco. While we applaud and thank our current legislators who have gone out of their way to advocate and give voice to Pasco community, we would ask that you use this opportunity to provide Pasco with more localized state representation that aligns with our community interests. Specifically, we respectfully request you consider redrawing the legislative district lines so that Pasco is represented by both 16th legislative district and 8th legislative delegation. The city's desire for representation from the 8th legislative district stems from proximity and commonality. The city of Pasco is one of 3 major cities along Kennewick and Richland that make up the Tri-Cities region. This region is a growing metropolitan area of over 300,000 residents. Since 1891, the 3 cities have worked to partner on common interests, goals, and challenges occurring within all 3 communities, often developing joint or intertwined community solutions. Currently, Pasco is excluded from the legislative district that represents the city of Kennewick and Richland. Given that, we ask for your consideration to structure the state legislative districts in relation to Pasco and the other 2 cities that comprise the Tri-Cities. Our desire is to maintain representation from the 16th legislative district stems from the connection between the Tri-Cities region and Walla Walla's successful and ever-growing economy. Residents from Walla Walla often travel to Pasco to shop, and
I apologize, Ms. Barajas, that your time has elapsed. And so, but I hope that you will submit your full comments to us via email. And so I want to ask at this time if the commissioners have questions or comments for this panel, beginning with Commissioner Gray.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. Thanks to all 4 of you for coming and testifying, and everybody else is going to testify today. Alexander, I appreciate your testimony about keeping the Tri-Cities in one legislative district. I wonder if you can help solve a puzzle. Each district has to have about 157,000 people, and the Tri-Cities as a whole has more than that, almost 300,000. If we have to divide it, how do you think we might have to do that? Or should we?
I would say that including Pasco within one of the districts of the Tri-Cities would be essential to properly representing the three cities. With that said, it would be obviously a bit difficult to find a clean-cut line, but I probably would say maybe having one district with Richland and Pasco and then having another district with Kennewick and Pasco could be a good way to split it, considering the racialized history of Pasco as a segregated city may have something to do with the fact that, may have something to do with the current boundaries that it has. So by properly including them in what were previously segregated cities or sundown towns would be pretty crucial to properly representing them in the Tri-Cities.
Thank you. Are there additional questions or comments from the commissioners? Okay, seeing none, I want to thank you, members of the panel, for your time, for being with us today, and you are now excused. Sean, if you would please call the next panel.
Of course, Chair. Our next panel will begin with Carolyn Boldish, Cathy Schaeffer, Dan Blankenship, and then Diane E. Young. If we can begin with the first testifier. Carolyn, can you begin by unmuting and turning your video on?
Thank you.
Oh, okay. I'm having internet. Hello, so my name is Caroline Bowdish, and I live in Pasco, a part, the small part of Pasco that is currently in the 16th LD, and it's very frustrating to be in meetings with the people in the city and the county.
You can continue. I turned your video off so we could hear you more clearly. Please continue.
Okay. It's frustrating to be in meetings, but they're in a completely different legislative district, and you can't talk about the same candidates because they're working with different people than I am. I'm also aware that the current 90 district is so huge that it's about the geographical size of the entire state of Connecticut, which makes it very difficult for candidates to campaign in the entire district. It's not lined up with roads that make transportation easy for candidates to get to the people that they're supposedly representing. And trying to get the districts so that they're a little more compact would be wonderful. I realize that the population is thin in much of eastern Washington, and so that will probably end up creating some large districts. But having the town of Pasco split into so many different districts when the population is really not that large, it's just sort of tacked on to somebody else. Doesn't feel as if we're being very well. It's very frustrating. So compact districts, and I'm glad that you're looking to keep Indian reservations complete and not split too. Thank you.
Badish, for the record, I wonder if you cut out right at the time where you were saying what district you were talking about. Could you just restate it, please? Okay. Sean, if you'd call the next testifier.
What did you
The chair asked what district you were referencing.
I actually 16th, but I've been in so many meetings with people from all of Pasco who represent or who are working for living in the 9th legislative district. It's very frustrating as we can't even vote for what.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And Sean, if you'd call the next testifier, please.
Of course, Chair. Our next testifier will be Cathy Schaeffer. I see your video's on if you can begin.
My name's Cathy Schaeffer. I'm in the 4th Congressional District in Touchy, an unincorporated town in Walla Walla County. In the most recent redistricting after 2010, my community was split between the 4th and the 5th district, and that included our school district, fire districts, and irrigation districts. So I'd like to see Touchy and all of Walla Walla County be reunified and fully contained in the 5th Congressional District, maintaining that vertical alignment of the 5th District with all of Washington's easternmost counties. Walla Walla County has some very unique attributes that they share with Southeast Washington, including the natural attributes of the watersheds, the Walla Walla watershed, the Toucan and the Asotin. These are unlike anything that's in the Columbia Basin. As well, our agricultural industries in Eastern Washington are not for fruit production oriented, but in Walla Walla County, we're more aligned with Whitman and Lincoln and Garfield and Spokane County in our agricultural production, and our farmer cooperatives and grower associations are all Eastern Washington based. The Umatilla National Forest ties us closely with Walla Walla County, Columbia County, Garfield, Asotin, and Northeast Oregon and Idaho as well. Lastly, I would say the way that we have aligned ourselves in Eastern Washington, even in the organizations and the regional efforts, whether it's our Workforce Development Council, our Walla Walla Community College District that reaches all the way over to Asotin County, and the State Department of Ecology and other regions have all, I think, reflected our emphasis on a.
I'm sorry that your time has elapsed. We would love to see your full comment in writing if you're willing to submit it. Sean, if you would please call the next.
Of course, Chair. Our next testifier will be Dan Blankenship. I see that you've unmuted. If you can begin your testimony.
Very good. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dan Blankenship. I am a retired dryland wheat grower. I'm a resident of Ritzville, and although I'm here testifying personally today, I recently began service as a county commissioner here in Adams County in January. I guess the gist of my comments today are that Eastern Washington is not just everything east of the Cascade Mountains. It's really kind of two distinct north and south running regions, Central Washington and Eastern Washington. And personally, if the 5th district needs to gain some folks to get back to the numbers it needs to be, I believe Adams County should revert back to the 5th district where it used to be. It just seems we have a little more in common with Whitman County, Lincoln County, Spokane County. At least the eastern 2/3 of this county geographically does business more so in Spokane than going west to other places. Although we do have irrigated agriculture in the western 1/3 of the county, that crop mix has a little more in common with counties to the east of us than counties to the west of us. I guess the one thing I might speak to is whatever you do with Adams County, it would really be helpful if we do not go back to being bifurcated as we used to be, where part of the county was in the 4th, part of the county was in the 5th. It makes drawing commissioner districts even more problematic than it has been. So I guess the gist of my comments are personally, I would like to see Adams County revert back to the 5th district. Thank you.
Thank you. We sure appreciate your input. Sean, if you'd call the final testifier for this panel.
Of course, Chair, our final testifier for this panel will be Margot Spindola. If you can turn on your video, unmute and begin your testimony, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Margot Spindola. I help lead the Redistricting Justice for Washington Coalition, and I was a longtime resident of the 4th Congressional District. Last time I testified, myself and many other community members spoke on the importance of keeping the Yakama Nation intact and the impact of splitting Latinx populations between legislative districts in Yakima, like what many have echoed on this call today. In creating legislative districts in Yakima, or in creating legislative districts that are representative, I request that you continue to consider the fact that both Latinx communities and tribal members are communities with similar interests and have historically worked together to bring equitable representation to the 14th and 15th. And evidence showing that they vote similarly 85 to 95% of the time. In summary, we strongly urge the Commission to create a majority people of color citizens voting age population legislative district in Yakima County that adjoins the Latinx and Native communities into a shared district. I'll also add that because part of the Caldwell Reservation is in this congressional district, that you place the entirety of the reservation in one district, specifically with the city of Wenatchee. Native communities have been robbed of the opportunity to be properly represented because of candidacy stories such as Yakima members like Patsy Whitefoot, Matt Tomaskin, and Caldwell members like Yvette Joseph and Joe Kokotis, whose own families couldn't even vote for them because of the district split. So I urge you to keep these concerns in mind and most importantly, conduct direct tribal consultation as they are legal requirements of the Commission. It must be a top priority for the Commission as Native American nations are classified special political entities under state law. Our coalition has spent the last year in conversations with communities from across the state, from all backgrounds, and I'm just merely uplifting the messages that have been brought forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you. At this time, I want to ask the commissioners if you have questions or comments for the members of this panel. Seeing none, I want to thank the members of the panel for sharing with us today. We really appreciate your time and your leadership on behalf of your community. Would you please call the next one?
Of course, Chair. Our next panel will begin with Diane Young, Thad Duvall, I'm sorry, Tim White, and Sydney Hill. Diane, if you can begin.
Thank you, members of the Commission. Thank you, members of the Commission, for your work on behalf of the citizens of Washington this year, and thank you for allowing me to testify. My name is Diane Young. I'm a retired RN and live just outside the city limits of East Wenatchee in the Canyon Heights neighborhood. I shop, volunteer, recreate, and am a member of cultural and environmental groups in Wenatchee and Leavenworth. As such, my community is the Wenatchee and Leavenworth area. I have little connection with the Yakima and Tri-Cities communities, and I am disenfranchised by being part of the 4th Congressional District. All of the East Wenatchee area, including its suburbs, and the Wenatchee and Leavenworth communities should be included in the 8th Congressional District. These communities have much greater economic and cultural ties with Western Washington than they do with the current 4th Congressional District. It makes much more sense to make adjustments to the southern part of the Western Washington 8th Congressional District boundaries, as this region of the Congressional District has more in common with the communities of the 3rd Congressional District. I strongly support keeping the 12th Legislative District communities together as represented by the current boundaries of the 12th District. Having stated all of the above, however, it's most important to me that legislative and congressional district boundaries are drawn so that Indigenous people tribes are kept together in a single district. Likewise, it is imperative to keep Latinx communities together so they have a real voice with their representatives and senators. The time has come for the Redistricting Commission to prioritize equity and inclusion for all of Washington state citizens as the Commission does its work this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time and your comment. Sean, if you would call the next testifier, please.
Of course, Chair, our next testifier will be Sydney Hill. I see your video is on. If you can unmute and begin your testimony, please.
Welcome.
Hello, my name is Sydney Hill, and I am a member of the 15th Legislative District in Toppenish. And I would like to say that as a Yakima Nation tribal member, I see problems with the Yakima reservation being split between two districts, the 14th and 15th, and how having a legislative district which encompass the whole reservation, including the areas down by the Columbia River, would benefit Yakima Nation as a whole and empower us to promote, issues that would benefit the Yakima Nation and also communities surrounding and in it. And I would just like to say that I hope that you would take, these concerns into consideration when you make your decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate your time and comments today. Sean, if you'd call the next testifier, please.
For Chair, our next testifier will be Todd Duvall. I see your video is on. If you can begin your testimony.
Thank you. My name is Todd Duvall. I'm the Douglas County Auditor, and I live in the 4th Congressional District and in the 12th Legislative District. I actually just live a few feet inside the 4th. The 8th is just across the street from me. The Wenatchee area is a very homogeneous area, including both the city of Wenatchee and the city of East Wenatchee and our growth management boundaries. And we enter into a lot of cooperative efforts. For example, the Port of Douglas County and the Port of Chelan County have recently combined so that they have a joint effort, and we share the airport, which is in Douglas County. So right now, it looks to me like population is going to have to shift from west to east, and that as the 5th gains more population, the 4th might lose, and we'll have a greater need to gain in the 4th. So as a previous testifier mentioned, that area is very similar in the Wenatchee area. And so it needs to be kept intact. And right now we just have the city of East Wenatchee in the 8th. So it would be better to keep the whole community, including the airport, which is farther east from the city, in that same congressional district. So it looks to me like we're either going to have to move Douglas County into the 8th or Chelan County into the 4th. Either way, I'd like to see Chelan and Douglas counties stay together in the 12th Legislative District and in the same congressional district. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time and for your comment. Sean, if you would hold the final testifier, please.
Chair, our final testifier will be Tim White. If you can turn on your video, unmute yourself and begin your testimony, please.
Thank you, Commissioners, for this opportunity. I don't have video for you. My name is Timothy White. I live on the right bank of the Okanagan River, which is the west boundary of the Colville Confederate Tribes Indian Reservation, which is the largest in area and the 2nd in population of Washington's 29 reservations. My housemate is a 30-year-old tribal member who hasn't been voting. He says, why? I wish to speak to commissioners on un-gerrymandering Indian country in the 4th and 5th CDs. For a sense of scale, the Colville Reservation's 2 million acres is bigger than most counties in area and bigger in population than many counties, such as Ferry. There are 9,500 enrolled members. Okanagan County has 42,000 people. The Colville Reservation is triple gerrymandered. It's in 2 federal congressional districts, 4th and 5th, 2 state legislative districts, 7th and 12th, but it's also gerrymandered in 3 counties, Okanagan, Ferry, and Chelan, if you include the tribal trust land pieces and allotments. The Yakima Res is also triple gerrymandered. Others have spoken to that. It's also parts of 2, maybe 3 counties. Now, redistricting can't fix that 4 of the 5 largest population Washington reservations are divided between or among our counties. That's the Yakima, Colville, Puyallup, Spokane, Chehalis, and Snoqualmie. I urge commissioners to consult with the tribes on how to ensure that the currently diluted Native voices achieve equality with non-natives and drawing the CD and LD dividers across Indian country. And if anyone has proposals for curing the county gerrymandering, please speak up during this process. It might be an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. We sure appreciate your time and your input. I want to ask the commissioners now if you have questions or comment for the members of this panel. Okay, being none, I'd like to thank the people who testified in this panel. You are now excused. Sean, if you would please call them.
Of course, Chair, our next panel will begin with Toyoka Tiskuga, Wanda Parks, Alice White, and Ann Baylor. If we can begin with the first testifier. We can move on to Wanda Parks then. If you can turn on your video and begin your testimony, please. And then if not, we will move on to Alice White. And we'll go down to Ann Baylor. And if you're able to turn on your video and begin your testimony. All right, we'll start with the rotation again, I guess. Oh, Alice, I see you. Perfect. If you can begin your testimony.
I don't see myself, but that's okay. I came forward today with this because I'm not really familiar. I know what you're doing and why you're doing it, but I was didn't have a lot of information in my own head of how you went about it and why it was important. But I've had Cathy that just spoke and Dan that just spoke, said everything I wanted to say. Walla Walla needs to be back in the 5th, and Adams County needs to be in the 5th, because that's who we are. And it makes it so much easier. And I would really appreciate it if you guys would look at that. And I'm sure if there's been 3 of us, it probably won't be the last, but I don't know those 2. So I've never talked to them. But I really, it's like when they do here, they annex a piece of property because the county wants it or the city wants it. And people have been your neighbors for years and now they're in a whole different division than you are. So there's a lot of things you can't talk about anymore. And part of that neighborhood feeling goes away. And that's what I think has happened with Walla Walla and with Adams County. Thank you.
Thank you. I wonder if for the record, if you could state your name.
Alice White.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course, Chair, our next panelist will be Toyoko. If you can begin. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right.
Hi, my name is Toyoko Tsukuda. I lived in Congressional District 4. Having lived for years in Richland and worked at the Pacific Northwest National Lab, I feel that it is important to change the way the CD4 and CD5 boundaries are drawn in order to link key communities. In particular, the line should focus on strengthening the nature east-west connections that are vital to economic and cultural development. The first, the lines for both the CD and LD should not divide the Colville Nation as they do currently. Second, both the agricultural and the technological focus of the WSU are closely tied across the Palouse, Tri-Cities, and the Yakima Valley. In particular, the relationship between the WSU main campus, Tri-City campus, and PNNL could be greatly strengthened under unified CD4. The National Lab currently has researchers with joint appointment in WSU in Pullman and Tri-Cities providing access to wealth of technologies and the innovations. It's time that new cities are drawn to have a strong congressional voices to infuse federal money to create the technology and innovation center for the Eastern Washington. By connecting these resources within the city, you will create an opportunity for robust technology and economic development. This would stimulate and provide a better linkage between our research-driven agricultural base and available academic resources. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We sure appreciate your time and your input. Sean, if you'd call the next testifier, please.
Of course, Chair, our next testifier will be Wanda Parks. If you can turn on your video, unmute yourself, and begin your testimony, please. And if not, Ann Baylor, if you can unmute yourself, turn on your video, and begin your testimony.
I wanted to say that I had not intended to take part in the testifying. I'm sorry.
No problem. Thanks for being here. We appreciate your presence.
I'm interested in what's going on, and we're here to learn.
Terrific. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
We will try Wanda Parks one last time. If you are able to turn on your video, unmute yourself to begin your testimony. And we're seeing no reaction, Chair, so that will be the end of the panel.
Terrific. So at this time, I want to ask the commissioners if you have questions or comments for this panel. All right, seeing none, I want to thank those people who came to share with us today. We appreciate your time and your presence here. You're now excused. Sean, if you'd please call the next panel.
Of course, Chair. Our next panel will begin with Ann Murphy, Art Swanack, Colin Tracy, and Chris Kimikas. We will begin with Ann and then Art. And if you can, or Colin, I see your video is on first. If you can begin your testimony, please.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Colin Tracy. I currently live in the 5th Congressional District, and I'm the Strategic Initiatives Manager for the Greater Spokane Valley Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak. I'm here to support maintaining the vertical border between the 4th and 5th Congressional Districts rather than rotating the border horizontally, which has been an idea proposed last time that this was held. If anything should change, I think the entirety of Walla Walla County and all of Adams County should be brought into the 5th as it was before. Contrary to what Western Washington may think, Eastern Washington is more than just what lies east of the Cascades. Central Washington and Eastern Washington are two very different regions with unique communities, industries, and agriculture, and should be represented as such. The thing that worries me the most about rotating the boundary to be horizontal is where that line would be drawn. For instance, if that line is drawn at say the I-90 marker, then many counties would be split in two, including Spokane County. As Spokane is a regional hub to many industries and activities for people across Eastern Washington, that should be kept whole with one representative. Lastly, Eastern Washington's shared border with Idaho means a lot of our towns and cities face similar issues better handled by a single representative who understands the plight of these small towns from Clarkston all the way up to Newport, and just leaves one representative to coordinate with the representative over in Idaho. Thank you.
Thanks very much for your time and your testimony. Sean?
Our next testifier will be Ann Murphy. If you can begin your testimony, please.
Thank you, and thank you, commissioners, for this opportunity to speak. My name is Ann Murphy, and as a city resident of the city of Spokane, I have been a longtime voting citizen in the 5th Congressional District and the 6th Legislative District. As we all continue to grow in our understanding of our communities of interest, my observations are, relative to the 4th and 5th District, that changing the direction of the dividing line between the 4th and 5th makes so much sense, particularly as it makes possible the opportunity to keep the native lands each in their own district. So by drawing an east-west boundary that would take into consideration county lines particularly, the Colville and the Spokane lands could all be in one congressional district. And additionally, the same attention should be made to that land so that it is not divided into more than one legislative district. Also, the Yakima Nation would do well in its own CD to the south of the 4th or 5th, whichever number you put on them. As for the significant community of interest in the Spokane area, I would like to see as much of the urban area as possible in the same 1 or 2 legislative districts. Splitting urban areas off into larger rural areas only serves to dilute those voices where there are significant urban versus rural needs and differences. And I know that this will get to be tricky for you as you all deal with the population growth that's on the west side of the state. As you already stated, that the districts here will need to grow in geographic size. So thank you so much for the important work you're doing that keeps our democracy working. Thank you.
Thank you. We sure appreciate your time and your input today. Sean, if you call the next testifier, please.
Of course, Chair, our next testifier will be Art Swanack. If you can begin your testimony, please.
Thank you, Chair and Commission. I'd like to testify on both the 5th District and the 9th State District. Regarding the 5th District, I disagree with the previous person. I believe north and south makes the most sense. I serve as a Whitman County Commissioner and farm. A lot of my boards and interactions with my fellow counties go north-south. I don't go east-west that far with the local interactions. Example, Workforce Development Board is north-south, and several other boards I deal with are in that same direction. In the issues we deal with, I believe the 5th should add Walla Walla the rest of the way and keep Adams in it because that's who I interact with, and they are part of our local area. With regards to the 9th, I'd suggest that you lose the section of Spokane County that's currently in the 9th and lose the section of Franklin, the Pasco area, because that does make some sense to me, and then add the Columbia County area to it, because that would make an area that is more cohesive towards our farming and our interactions. I'd note also on the north-south interaction, we have WSU in Pullman, which is the base campus for all of Washington State University's activities across the state. We now have WSU Spokane with their med school. That's going to be a major interaction and needs to be kept inside that same congressional area because they're working back and forth developing that medical school. So I think that's very important. And finally, I just say thank you for the time to testify here.
Thank you, Mr. Swanack. I wonder if you could please state your name for the record.
Name is Arthur Dean Swanack.
Thank you very much. Sean, if you'd call the last testifier, please, for this panel.
Of course, Chair, our last testifier for this panel will be Chris Kamikas. If you can, I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing your last name. I saw you laugh there. If you can, please begin your testimony.
Minskis, 25 years, I still have a hard time getting used to it, so I forgive you. So I'm joining you today as a 15-year resident of the 5th District and as the mayor of Liberty Lake, Washington, and we're in the 4th Legislative District, and we are the fastest growing city in the state, though we are only 12,000 strong at this point. You know, I just want to advocate, like a lot of others here, you know, to keep the strong north-south regions. Eastern Washington is more than just everything east of the mountains. We are split between Eastern and Central Washington. That's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. That's just how it, you know, how it plays out. Keeping Spokane County and the entire Eastern region together, we have a history of working very well together, and it has been successful, as shown by many of the boards and commissions that I serve on, including Spokane Regional Transportation Council. We have regional mayors meetings that pull from everywhere. You have Colville all the way down to Walla Walla, and we share the border with Idaho, which we typically tend to align more with regards to our industry, our values, our topography, and we have a lot of the same issues as northern Idaho and Eastern Washington. So I'd like to see the north-south split, you know, stay the same. If anything needs to change, as others have said as well, I would support Walla Walla being reunited to the south, in the south to the 5th, and then Adams County, which is more like Lincoln and Whitman, should also come back home to the 5th. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I wonder if for the record, you could just state your name once again. I'm sorry, you cut out just as you were saying it.
Chris Kaminskis.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. So with that, I would like to ask the commissioners if you have comments or questions for the members of this panel. Okay, seeing none, I would like to thank the speakers on this panel. Thank you for your time and effort and your leadership. You are now, please call the next panel.
Our next panel will begin with Danielle Edenspring. I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce your last name. Danielle Esser, Dawn Olmsted, and then Jeffrey Olson. If we can begin with the first panelist. Daniel, if you can turn on your video and begin your testimony, please.
I assume you're calling me?
Yes,
Daniel.
please.
Sure. Daniel Herbling, District 5, Pend Oreille County. I'm pretty new to the area. I came here via Chicago, New York, Portland, and then moved out here a few years ago. I'm the CEO of a global tech company. I started the broadband action team in Pend Oreille County. I work with the Washington State Student Achievement Council and a group of Wazoo professors on a transformational learning management platform. That's the first interoperable one between DOE, DOD, government, private sector, and academia. I'm the founder and CEO of a Washington State nonprofit and a federal 501c3 to future-proof the prosperity of Americans. I work with Gonzaga on a new technology, which is early disease detection once they get up and running. And for fun and give me something outside of this to do, I'm a volunteer firefighter in Pend Oreille County. That's relaxing to me. So what I wanted to speak about in terms of what I see is the 5th Congressional District is uniquely laid out. And this allows major cities to be within a few hours of each other. If this were to change, cities like Pullman and Walla Walla would be at the far ends for the 4th, as well as their representative in Congress. The current 4th and 5th districts running north-south have been this way for generations, and for good reason. Colville, Spokane, Pullman, Walla Walla are economic centers in their own right. If anything needs to change, Walla Walla should be reunited in the south, back into the 5th district, and Adams County, which is more like Lincoln and Whitman, should come back home to the 5th as well, like it was before. Thank you.
We appreciate your comment. Sean, if you'd call the speaker, please.
Of course, Chair, I see that Jeffrey Olson's video is on. So Jeffrey, if you can unmute yourself and begin your testimony, please.
Greetings.
Welcome.
I'm Jeff Olson. I'm in the 5th and the 6th Legislative District. I decided to answer some of the questions that have come up. To Blanche, who wanted to move the 9th out of Franklin County, that would create a great deficit on the 9th, and which means it would have to move deeper into Spokane County, forcing the 7th to move heavily into the 12th. To those who want the 8th to take over Colville Nation, state GOP would love that because of the voting of Okanagan and Douglas County. It would that would be enough to overturn the last election. And for Whitman is still in the 5th. Walla Walla, I'm still divided whether the 5th should take it or do more to. I'm more in favor of getting Adams County back. It borders Spokane County, and it only has 10,000 population. And there's some others that I would like to talk, but I will reserve my time back right now.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. It's always good to see you. Thanks for being here and for providing input. And so if you'd call the next testifier, please.
Of course, Chair, if we can have Danielle Reserve, if you can turn on your video, unmute yourself and begin your testimony, please.
Hello, and thank you very much for the opportunity to join you today. My name is Danielle Garby-Reeser. I live in the unincorporated parts of Walla Walla County. The first point I'd like to emphasize today is the importance of having Pasco whole as a city and not split between two districts, legislative districts, as it currently is. Understandably, all of Tri-Cities would like to be together, but it's too large of a city area. And so at least part of the remedy we can acknowledge going forward is keeping it together and keeping it with the 16th as a way to manage the growth that's needed for the 16th as well. I'd also like to emphasize the benefits of horizontally redistricting the 4th and the 5th. I grew up in Moses Lake, so certainly know the 4th as well. And the ties between Central and Eastern Washington in this southeast corner of the state are strong. And there are some potential benefits in addition to those listed before about consolidating our tribal lands north and south. One that hasn't been mentioned is that we could better serve our veterans. Right now, we only have 2 VA hospitals in all of Eastern Washington, and they're both in the 5th, one in Walla Walla and one in Spokane. If we had north-south, if we went east-west instead, each district would have an advocate for our VA hospital system. I'd also like to emphasize other ways that you can watch the economic development in our region, and that includes banking. And so you look at the largest bank in our area in Walla Walla, Baker Boyer, it has expanded to the Tri-Cities and Yakima because that is the way that there's growth and economic development in this area for the largest bank in our state, the oldest bank in our state. I also think it's important that we keep our watersheds together. And as much as it's nice to have a shared border with Idaho in the 5th, we have significant water management issues with Oregon, and especially around the management of the Lower Snake River dams and keeping those intact. And if the district was horizontal, we'd be able to keep them together. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments and input. Sean, if you call the last panel.
Of course, Chair. Dawn, I see you just turned on your video. Thank you so much. If you can begin your testimony.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Dawn Olmstead. I live in Medical Lake, Washington in the Spokane County. I appreciate the opportunity to share my testimony today. And I just kind of want to share the opinion that I think the 4th and 5th districts should remain north and south with their boundaries. Seems to me that Central Washington is more similar, has more common interests agriculturally, environmentally, and then as well the 5th district with the just a drier agriculture yeah, so those things I think are common. They should probably remain the same. I have read an article about the boundaries switching horizontally, and that concerns me just because living in Spokane County, I'd like to see our county stay whole. Yeah. And I like that our 5th district shares the boundary with Idaho and is just one person there to communicate with. So that is my opinion. Thanks very much.
Thank you. We sure appreciate your time and your input. At this time, I would like to ask the commissioners if you have comments or questions. Okay, seeing none, I sure want to thank you for coming and sharing with us today. You are now excused. Sean, if you'd please call the next panel.
Of course, Chair. Our next panel will begin with Nancy Churchill, Nicole Dice, Patricia Shaden, and Bob Wright. And we will begin with Nancy. Nancy, if you're able to turn on your video, unmute yourself and begin your testimony, please.
Hello, thank you for allowing me to testify today. I appreciate the opportunity. I live in Ferry County. I am active locally in the Ferry County Republican Party, and I have done quite a bit of traveling over both the 4th and the 5th district. I believe that the district boundaries should remain the current north-south orientation. And I also agree with previous testimony to to pull Walla Walla and Adams County into the 5th Congressional District. That's my testimony at this time.
Thank you. I wonder if you could please state your name for the record.
Nancy Churchill.
Thank you. Appreciate your input. Sean, if you'd call the next testifier, please.
Of course, Chair, our next testifier will be Nicole Dice. I see your video's on. If you can begin your testimony, please.
Hi, my name is Nicole Dice, and I'm the Ponderay County Treasurer, and I currently live in Newport, Washington. And I'm speaking today regarding the 5th Congressional District, and I would like to see it running north and south that it is now. Our county shares a border with Idaho, and means that other counties currently in the 5th Congressional District, like Spokane County and Whitman County, share similar issues that we have when you're border communities with another state. Also, the Kalispel Tribe of Indians is located, the reservation is located here in Ponderay County, and they also have land down in Spokane County, and I would like to see them remaining in the same district, so those people can be represented by in the same congressional district. Thank you.
Thank you. We sure appreciate your input. If you would just call the next speaker, please.
Of course, Chair, our next speaker will be Robert Bob Wright. If you can turn on your video, unmute yourself and begin your testimony, please. Okay, as they start that, Patricia, oh, never mind. Robert, please begin.
This is Bob Wright. I live in Spokane County. Listening to everybody and what they've said, I have to align myself with the idea that we should continue to have a north-south boundary, and that all those who used to be in our county or in our district should be returned to that district, and we can all be together. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your time and your input. Ron, if you would call the final speaker to this panel.
Of course, Chair, our final speaker will be Patricia Shaden. If you can turn on your video, unmute yourself and begin your testimony, please.
Welcome.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Hi. I'm going to take a little different viewpoint here. I've lived in this area for 30 some years. I've raised my children, have many grandchildren in this area. I'm a retired person who has a retirement job, but travel all over Washington State. And I see the variety, the effectiveness of each community and the way they interact with the legislature and don't. And I'm very much in favor of keeping the north-south corridor, the 5th, simply because the effectiveness of the communities with commonality. I've seen, we work out of Monroe, Washington, yet we travel up to Twist and come back here to home in Spokane. And I think it's very important that we not divide nations, the tribal nations. I think it's important that we, at this point, when we have a kaleidoscope of humanity here in Spokane, especially in my neighborhood, I'm in North Indian Trail area, we've seen an influx of citizens that's amazing and wonderful and beautiful. But I don't think this is a good time to start redrawing districts, because as I become acquainted with the people in the area, they're just getting their footing about what Spokane is like, about different areas in the state and what they have to offer. They're new citizens, and we need to not shuffle the cards. It's a kaleidoscope of humanity that I think we need to offer some continuity to. And so that would be my argument for keeping the 5th district as it is. And also, I am very much in favor of having Adams County, Lincoln County, and Whitman County in the 5th. And I know that's going to take some juggling, but for these causes that I've mentioned, I think it's very
Thank you. We appreciate your comment. Sorry, you ran short on time there. And just for the record, could you please state your name? So I wonder if we can give her another few seconds so that she can state her name on the record.
Patricia, if you're able to unmute yourself again and then state your
Okay.
name. Thank you.
Patty's my name, Patricia Shadden.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. So I'd like to ask the commissioners at this time if you have additional comments or questions for the members. Okay, seeing none. Gosh, I really appreciate your time and your willingness to spend some of your Saturday with us today. Thank you. We're now excused. And Sean, if you would please call the next panel.
Absolutely, Chair. Our next panel will begin with Robert Roskantz, Roger Davenley, Sandra Barb, and then Shane Labe. And we will begin with Robert.
My name is Robert Rosenkrantz. I live in Newport, Washington. It is of great value to have a district that borders other states. Washington State's 5th district borders both Idaho and Oregon. This gives our representative and constituents the advantages that come from being neighbors. Among them, a head start towards forming coalitions arising from shared values, shared transportation networks, and cross-border employment. The 5th also borders Canada, which expands the opportunity to serve American interests in partnership with our neighbors to the north. These overlapping opportunities create a force multiplier effect for effective representation, not just for the 5th, but for all of Washington State. Severing the connection to any of these borders would degrade the 5th's potential, as well as dilute Washington State's presence in Congress. A couple other points. Spokane is the healthcare hub of Eastern Washington, with a network of rural critical access hospitals feeding into it from both north and south within the 5th. Having one representative seeing healthcare from the perspective of all Eastern Washington is a huge benefit. I know that personally. I serve as an elected hospital commissioner in Pend Oreille County. Central Washington hospitals feed more into Wenatchee, Tri-Cities, and Yakima. And finally, Eastern Washington is distinct from Central Washington economically, with our district being heavily dependent on timber and logging, something we share with Idaho and Canada. Again, borders matter. There might be short-term partisan tactical advantage from a radical redrawing of the map for the 5th, but it would sacrifice strategic strength. The proposal should be discarded and forgotten. Thank you.
Thanks very much for your time and your input. Sean, if you'd call the next speaker.
Of course, Chair, our next speaker. Roger, I see your video is on. If you can begin your testimony.
Hi, I would like to thank the commissioners for giving me the opportunity to testify today. My name is Roger Devaney, and I have been a Washington resident since 1989. First 8 years of that was in Okanagan, Washington, working in the apple industry. And since then, I've been in Spokane working in the high-tech industry and just recently retired, but still very involved in my community through things like Rotary and Knights of Columbus and so on. I would like to say that far Eastern Washington is unique in having a diverse mix of high-tech farms, reservations, hydropower, and universities. I believe the current mix is good, but if we need to grow, I believe it would be beneficial to add Walla Walla. We also should share many values and our culture with Northern Idaho, of which we're all kind of together as one big hub, looped in with Northern Idaho and Eastern Washington. We are a regional medical capital, as the previous speaker just stated, for the entire inland Northwest that goes all the way through into Montana. And we also have the only other large airport in the state that serves not only the Spokane region, but pretty much everything from Wenatchee and Okanagan all the way over to Northern Idaho. And I think for that reason, we should keep our north-south boundary intact. And if we do need to grow, as I mentioned before, adding Walla Walla would make the most sense, since we all share very common needs in terms of water, hydropower, agriculture, and congressional representation. And so based upon that, I would add that we ask that we keep our north-south border intact and just add a little bit, maybe on the southwest corner of the district if we need to grow. And I would thank you very much for this opportunity to testify today. And I wish you the best of luck in your difficult job of redistricting.
Thank you. We sure appreciate your time and your input. Sean, if you'd call the next speaker, please.
Absolutely, Chair. Our next speaker will be Sandra Barb. If you can turn on your video, unmute yourself and begin your testimony, please.
This is Sandy Brab. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you for allowing me to speak today. So as I said, my name is Sandy Brab and I live in Pullman. So regarding the 9th Legislative District, Eastern Washington is primarily dryland wheat fields of the Palouse and wine grapes in the south. We would like our representatives to be able to focus on the rural issues facing the vast majority of the residents in Whitman, Adams, Franklin, Garfield, and Asotin counties. It's not an equitable split for either groups when our legislators must take their focus away from the rural issues to focus their time on urban issues facing residents in the greater Spokane and Pasco areas. So if we are to redraw the legislative district, I would like to see the lines drawn to keep the rural communities in the same district. Then regarding the 5th Congressional District, as other people have already mentioned, if something needs to change, I think that Walla Walla and Adams County need to be added back into the 5th because they are more like Lincoln and Whitman County. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
So our final testifier for this will be Shane. I see your video is on. If you can begin your testimony, please.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Shane Leib. I live in Walla Walla County. And I would like to address the horizontal comments made about the 4th and 5th Congressional District. Walla Walla County would not be served by being pushed wholly into the 4th. We have different commerce and economy in Walla Walla County. And as a previous commenter made, she cited that a local bank here, the oldest bank, Baker Boyer, has found it financially feasible to move into the 4th District. They've actually been in the 4th District since 1998, since before the last redistricting. So I would like to recommend to the commission to either keep us straddled or move us wholly back into the 5th to rejoin as we were 10 years ago. Like I said, our economies, our climates, our agricultural criteria are different from each other. And I think we would be best suited either as we are or move back into the 5th. Thank you for your time and I appreciate your willingness to serve on the commission.
Thank you. We sure appreciate your time and your comments today. And so with that, I want to ask the commissioners if you have questions or comments for the folks on this panel. Okay. Seeing none, I'd like to thank you for your time and just spending a portion of your Saturday with us. Thank you. Really appreciate your input. You're now excused. And Sean, if you would please.
Absolutely, Chair. Our next panel will be Sharon Benzel, Sharon Wells, Steve Peterson, and Victor Phillips. So we will begin with Sharon Benzel, then Sharon Wells. Sharon Benzel, if you're able to turn on your video, unmute yourself and begin your testimony, please. Okay, we will move on to Sharon Wells has not connected their audio and video, so we'll move on to Steve Peterson.
This is Steve Peterson. Speaking as regards as a former mayor of Liberty Lake and in the 4th Legislative District. There is a Central and Eastern Washington. Eastern Washington is the 5th District. It truly is a border community which includes Canada, Idaho, and Oregon. It is a Midwestern region of timber, minerals, wheat, grapes, oranges, orchards, and urban areas consisting of large metropolitan cities and medium to small cities. It has manufacturing, transportation hubs, education, and large regional healthcare. In the future, the current boundary of the 5th is perfect and distinct and represents all segments of our land use. In the future, our growth in the normal will be shifting to the smaller towns and cities with advantageous greater focus on at-home business, education, healthcare, and entertainment. As the population shifts, we will see significant push north and south, growth in the Columbia River border communities and Central Washington. Maintain the 5th or expand to include Walla Walla and Adams while redrawing the state legislative districts to fit anticipated growth patterns. Thank you.
Thank you. We sure appreciate your input today. Sean, if you could.
Yes, I see Sharon Benzel, you have your video on. If you can unmute yourself and begin your testimony, please. Sharon, if you can unmute yourself.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'd like to give my opinion that, the 5th district as it remains would be ideal. We have the Columbia, we have the VA hospitals, we have agriculture and economics similar, and we're just a few hours away from each other. If you decide to redistrict the 5th Congressional District, my suggestion would be that you include Lincoln, Spokane, Adams, Whitman, Benton, Franklin, Walla Walla, Columbia, Garfield, and Osoton. That would make the 5th Congressional District a little smaller, but keep most of the similarities that we have in our communities. Together, we have dry agriculture in Walla Walla County, and it's grapes and sweet onions and wheat, and we have so many things in common. We have a representative, and we would keep that. And I think that the north and south lines for the 5th Congressional District would be the best for our district. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify.
Sharon, thank you. I wonder if you'd be willing to state your name for the record.
Oh, yes. My name is Sharon Benzel.
Thank you. Sean, if you would please call the next speaker.
Of course, our next speaker will be Sharon Wells. If you can begin your testimony, please.
I'm going to try. Will you let me know if you hear me okay?
We can hear you clearly.
We can hear you.
Okay, good. I moved here from Seattle last year, and I'm very happy to be out of Seattle, out of King County. I feel like I'm in a district now where I feel it's a bit more conservative, which represents my values. I moved here for that change, and I love being here. I like the way it seems. I like our representative, and I'm hoping to not see any dramatic changes. I'm learning about what goes on here. And I just want to say, I know that there's a great push for people on the west side to move this direction. I have several friends who've moved over. So I don't want to see us shrinking. I want to see us represented. And if it means Walla Walla, where my parents live, and I am back and forth over there quite a bit. So I think Adams and Walla Walla sounds like a good match for us, keeping our district more north and south. And I just want that input. I'm no expert, but I like what I see, and I want to keep that intact. Thank you.
Yes.
Karen, would you be willing to tell me where you live?
Now I live in Veradale, Spokane Valley.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Excellent. So our next speaker will be Victor Phillips. I see your video's on. If you can unmute yourself and begin your testimony, please.
Thank you. I live in Walla Walla. Main thing I want to see, Walla Walla County is divided between the 4th and the 5th Congressional District. I would like to see all of Walla Walla County being in the 5th Congressional District. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. For the record, can you state your name?
Victor Phillips.
Thank you very much. Excuse me for taking a minute, just completing my notes. So that concludes this panel, and I want to ask the commissioners at this time if you have questions or comments for this panel. Okay, seeing none, I want to thank you for testifying today and for spending this time with us. We appreciate that. And you're now excused. And Sean, if you would please call the next panel.
Absolutely, Chair. Our next panel will begin with William Bill Connolly, Larry Brown, Mike Hansen, and Rob Reganayo. I apologize for mispronouncing your last name, but we will begin with William. William, if you're able to unmute yourself, turn on your video and begin your testimony, please.
Hi, I'm Bill Connolly, and I'd like to begin by saying that, if anything needs to change, Walla Walla should be reunited in the South back into the 5th District. I'm from Spokane, Washington. And Adams County, which is more like Lincoln and Whitman, should be back in the 5th as well. The current 4th and 5th districts running north and south have been this way for generations. I happen to be 4 generations Spokane. And it's Colville, Spokane, Pullman, Walla Walla are economic centers in their own right. And included in the 5th is the most reasonable. Our shared borders with Idaho means a lot to our towns and cities. We face similar issues. And Eastern Washington is dry land, wheat fields. And of the Palouse, it's wine and grapes in the south, and which is a different agricultural than the central. And Eastern Washington is more than just everything from the mountains. We are Eastern and Central, just like our universities say, Eastern Washington University and Central Washington University. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. We appreciate your input. Sean, if you'd call the next speaker, please.
Absolutely, Chair. Rob, I see your video is on. If you can unmute yourself and begin your testimony. Rob, are you intending to provide testimony?
Was that me, Rob
Yes.
Ruggiano?
Yes.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Rob Ruggiano, and I'm used to the name issue, so no big deal. Real brief, I don't follow this stuff as much as I'd like to. There's a lot of talk going on about things that are just over my head. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm building a business here in Spokane. It's a 40-year dream actually coming to life. Pretty cool time. Simply put, if it isn't broken, why fix it? I love my city. I love my state. I love my country. I don't see any value. I don't see any justification in making any changes to my district or my area. Forgive me for forgetting your name, ma'am, but the mayor of Liberty Lake, I think she said it just about as good as anyone can. We've been doing great over here for decades. A gentleman a few moments ago said it earlier, 4 or 5 generations here in Washington State. And I don't want to see this change. That's my testimony. I think that needs to sink in real deep. We got enough stuff to work on. I said I love my country, I love my city, and I still like Washington, but there's a lot more for us to be focusing on rather than splitting things up. I don't understand why we're having this conversation, quite frankly. Thank you.
Thank you. We sure appreciate your input.
You bet.
Sean, if you'd call the next speaker, please.
Absolutely, Chair. Our next speaker will be Steve Phillips. I see your video's on. If you can unmute yourself and begin your testimony, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk. My name is Stephen Phillips. I like the character and makeup of the 5th District the way it is. I appreciate the borders that we have with Canada, Idaho, and Oregon. And like most of the people that live here, we would like to see it remain the same. If you need more people, they should come from the Walla Walla and Adams County areas. In addition, I would like to go on record as saying, I don't believe the commission should be allowed to make any redistricting decisions based upon any group's racial identity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate your input today. And Sean, if you'd call the last speaker for this panel.
Of course, Chair. The last speaker for this panel will be Mike Hansen. If you can unmute yourself, turn on your video, and begin your testimony, please. Mike Hansen, are you there for testimony? It does.
I am here, but I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
The issue before you has been before you before. I am Mike Hansen. I served as a Pend Oreille County Commissioner for 12 years and found that in concert with the fellow commissioners from Eastern Washington, we were able to accomplish a lot through the representation that we have with the commonalities and the balance between the rural and the urban sectors of our communities. I believe that we are better served staying together in alignment the way we are than we ever would be by being split apart for any reason, from Tom Foley up until Cathy McMorris today, where representation has been good. They've been able to serve the people because they've been able to work with the legislators from the other side of the state. I believe that leaving things the way they are and adding back in Adams County and bringing Walla Walla County together with us is in the very best interest of Eastern Washington and the state of Washington. I want to thank you for the opportunity that you've given us to speak to this issue.
Thank you. We really appreciate your time and your input. At this time, I would like to ask the commissioners if you have comments or questions for the members of this panel. Okay, seeing none, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for coming today and sharing with us. You are excused. If you would please call the next panel.
Of course, Chair. Our next panel will begin with Susan Love, then Larry Brown, Brenda John, and David Hardy. And we will begin with Susan Love. Susan, if you are able to turn on your video, unmute yourself, and begin your testimony, please. Susan, are you there? In that case, we will move on to Brenda John. If you're able to turn on your video, unmute yourself and begin your testimony.
Alrighty. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. My name is Brenda St. John, not Brenda John, just to clarify that. I've been here since, I'm in Stevens County, Washington, and I've lived here since 1981, working, raising a family, and trying to get more involved in our state. I would like to say that the current north-south orientation of the 4th and 5th districts should continue. The towns and cities are economic hubs. Each city in its own right brings a lot of economy to the area. And these cities are joined by north-south running roads. Our highways run north-south, and that the highways connect us. The roads that run east-west are secondary highways. They go over mountains it's the travel between cities from east to west is not as convenient as north to south. And then our easternmost counties that they all border the state of Idaho, they all have something in common because of their border. And I believe they should all stay together in one district as well. I also support Walla Walla coming back into being in the 5th district and Adams County being in the 5th district. So that's all I got. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate your time and your input. Sean, if you'd call the next speaker, please.
Absolutely, Chair. Our next speaker will be Susan Love. If you can unmute yourself and begin your testimony, I see your video's on.
Hi, this is Susan Love, and I'm from Garfield, Washington, and in the middle of the wheat country. And I do not think it would be wise to take and split up our county. We work together well. We have a lot of industry in our area, and I would like to see Walla Walla and Asotin County come into our 5th district. I see no reason for that to be split up. Thank you.
Thanks very much. We appreciate your time and your comments. Sean, if you'd call the next speaker, please.
Absolutely, Chair. Our next speaker will be Larry Brown. Larry, if you're able to turn on your video, unmute yourself and begin your testimony, please.
Yes, I'm Larry Brown. I'm a resident of Ponderay County since 1979 when I retired from the Navy. Seems to me that any substantial realignment of the congressional districts must be avoided. The current alignment has developed over a long history of development and success. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for taking the time to be with us today. Sean, if you would call the final speaker for this panel, please.
Absolutely, Chair. Our final speaker will be David Hardy. David, if you're able to turn on your video and unmute yourself and begin your testimony, please.
Hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. This is Dave Hardy. I'm from Newman Lake, Washington. And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to give a little bit of input here. There's been a lot of interesting comments and statements from various individuals, and I think the important thing here is that we do the maximum amount of changing in the districts to accommodate a lot of the input that we've seen as far as the state level. As far as the 5th district and 4th district, I think to keep the north-south boundaries, so to speak, the way they are, and to add whatever is necessary from the southern counties. So that's kind of my input. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Once again, my name is Dave Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. So I'd like to ask the commissioners at this time if you have additional questions or comments for the folks on this panel. Okay, seeing none, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for choosing to be here with us on behalf of your community. We appreciate your leadership. And now excused. So Sean, if you call the next panel.
Absolutely, Chair. Our final panel today will be Jeffrey Robinson and Cheryl A. Cox. We will begin with Jeffrey. And Jeffrey, if you're able to turn on your video and mute, thank you, and begin your testimony.
Well, hello, this is very frightening being on here. Hi, my name is Jeffrey Robinson. I've testified before you before. I'll save you the fun introduction. Thank you all so much for having me. I have a simple request for you. I ask you to put a united Pasco in the 16th legislative district. I ask for this for 4 reasons. Number 1, keeping our city split the way it is now perpetuates racism. Merging us into a large legislative district the Tri-Cities is mathematically impossible and also perpetuates racism because it dilutes this majority-minority community's voice and frankly erases our unique identity. Number three, if you put a United Pasco in the 16th legislative district, what you are effectively doing is reducing the travel time that it would take to get from one end of the 16th legislative district to the other by at least an hour and a half. And you are also keeping a region of our state whose economies are growing together and giving us a more equitable voice in our affairs, which brings me to the fourth point, and I hope to God I'm making sense. My uncle died 2 days ago and I'm a little frazzled. The final thing is that Pasco deserves to be represented under one legislative district. We deserve a chance to pick our representative. If you do this, you give us a near 50-50 chance to do exactly that. And finally, because what the heck, I'm a glutton for punishment and I hope to God I'm making sense, I think it is important that the 4th and 5th congressional districts, if we want to keep the tribes together and if we want to better reflect our community, go horizontally. Many speakers have talked about how our economy, especially in banking, is shifting in a horizontal direction. Bring us together, man. Give us a chance to shine as a 4th congressional district that goes horizontally. Thank you. I'm happy to answer questions. What the heck?
Thank you. We sure appreciate your time, and I'm very sorry to hear about your loss. Sean, if you would call the next speaker.
Of course, Chair. Our final speaker will be Cheryl A. Cox. Cheryl, if you're able to unmute, turn on your video and begin your testimony, please. Cheryl, if you're able to turn on your video. And I'm not, oh, here we go.
Am I with you now?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry about that. To all of the commissioners, all of your efforts are appreciated. I am Cheryl Cox. I live in Walla Walla. I'm a 4th generation agriculturalist. I ranched just below Lower Monumental Dam on the Walla Walla side of the river. I am for keeping the configuration of the 4th and 5th districts as they are and making the adjustments that are needed. I would like to offer a slightly different take. Federally, if we keep our districts, the north-south alignment, there are several benefits, I believe, to us. We get 2 representatives in the Capitol back in DC that are going to be aware of the glorious Snake River, Columbia River dam system that contributes to agricultural production and the shipping of our products. We have gone through and currently are going through a severe drought, and having 2 representatives that understand agriculture in these areas is great. If you look at our map, the northern tiers of counties in western or northern Washington have endured horrendous fires, and that we have great devastation to our rangeland, our grazing land, our timberlands, and having 2 people back in DC that are acutely aware of what we are going through does nothing but benefit our state and our many agricultural needs. So again, to all of you, wishing you a lovely weekend and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today, and we really appreciate your thoughts and your input. So at this time, commissioners, I wonder if you have questions or comments for the folks. Okay, seeing none, thank you for your time again, and you're excused. And at this time, I would like to offer the commissioners an opportunity to provide closing comments. Commissioner Graves?
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you for everybody for coming and testifying today. It's a Saturday at the end of July, and there are plenty of things in this beautiful state of ours that I'm sure you could all be doing, and the fact that you chose to talk about your communities and what you think of your current boundaries is a really important thing, and I'm just really grateful to every one of you for showing up.
Thank you, Commissioner Graves. I appreciate your comments, and Commissioner Sims.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll echo that. Thank you for, taking time on this beautiful afternoon to provide us with some feedback. It's clear to me that the question around the 4th and 5th district and whether or not those lines remain vertical or move horizontally is of real interest and concern to the folks in Eastern Washington. So I really appreciate the testimony today.
Thank you. And I want to thank all the people who made the meeting today possible, beginning with our redistricting staff and caucus staff. Thank you very much for your efforts for staffing this meeting, making sure that we're able to do this smoothly and effectively and well. I want to thank our American Sign Language interpreters for helping us to keep our commitment to be accessible and for everybody to have the opportunity to participate. I'd also like to thank our Spanish language interpreters for the same. I would like to thank the person who is doing court reporting for us today, making sure that we have an accurate record. And I would finally like to thank, I would like to thank our commissioners for just the enormous amount of time and effort and wisdom you've committed to your state and your communities by serving on this commission. Thank you. And finally, I'd like to thank members of the public who chosen to join us today. Thank you. This is such an important process that will have an impact on the next 10 years of our democratic process. Thank you for choosing to be a part of it. We recognize that your time is valuable, and it is so important to us that you've chosen to spend this time with us on behalf of your communities. Have a great weekend, everyone. This meeting